Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Making Connections, the BattleCON analysis show where I, Marco DeSantos, try my best not to do so horribly at BattleCON Online. Or is it? See, there's one thing that I'm starting to realize. A lot of people are streaming and or making videos of BattleCON Online now. And I'm starting to realize that there's a lot of content that seems to be what I do on Making Connections already, Somebody plays the game, they have cool reactions to what's happening, and that's fun, and that's absolutely fine. I'm actually really happy that people are making this kind of content. But then I realized that what can we do as Level 99 Games in order to provide you guys with content that not everybody might be able to make? See, no offense to people like me or anybody who does streams, but filming yourself while playing a video game is hard. Commentating and everything, that's hard. But something I can do, me, Marco DeSantos, is give you guys matchup analysis. Read, look at gameplays, look at replays, and analyze how those games went. Talk about the matchup. Talk about those intricacies that may not actually come through when I'm playing a regular game of BattleCon. Because honestly, most of the time, I'm spending my time thinking about what to do rather than talking about what to do or what I should have done or what the matchup is like. So by doing post commentary on top of games that are already been played, I'm able to, take time, pause the games and say, hey, in this situation, this beat is interesting, look at this beat and stuff like that. I can also start talking about specific topics and have games that display or showcase those topics. For example, in this episode, we're going to be talking about controllers. Now, controllers are a very interesting set of characters in BattleCon, and actually, it's not a predetermined BattleCon category or classification of fighter. Most of you might see these characters as the tricksters. They're the controllers. They're the people with lots of tricks that don't have a lot of stats. So you might call them tacticians, you might call them weird specialists, whatever you want to call them. These are the characters that are defined by one big thing: tricks and the ability to trap your opponents in them. What controllers do best is the fact that they can win a lot of beats. And I'm not kidding. Controllers oftentimes have effects that allow them to win beats outright. However, they're not that big of a win. You see, controllers are really consistent. Characters like Caitlyn, Kadath, for example, are able to easily trap opponents in their game plan and work around your opponent's weaknesses, usually exploiting those to the point where your opponent feels like they can't do anything. However, as a trade-off, most of these characters tend to have lackluster stats, especially in the power department. So this is the start of what I'd like to call the 2-for-1. Excuse me. This is the start of what I'd like to call the 2-for-1. A controller character can win 2 beats for every 1 beat any other character usually wins. So this is really simple. A character like Cadenza can easily win 1 beat and deal 5 damage to you by playing a hydraulic shot or something like that. However, characters like Kadath and Caitlyn can win 2 beats in a row. However, most of the time they'll only be dealing 2 or 3 damage. So, with that in mind, 1 beat for a regular character takes 2 beats for a control character to usually, make up for the difference. This is the quote-unquote balancing factor for these control characters. They can win a lot of beats consistently, and in fact, they can win so many beats in a row. However, it usually takes the opponent only 1 or 2 beats to bounce back. This makes controller characters disproportionately weak in the current meta of BattleCon Online, because it seems that, I need to do so much stuff in order to work, and you only need to work once in order to catch back. This can be very frustrating, especially for many new players. However, what controller characters have above all of these other characters is the fact that they can do it really consistently. Played really well, controller characters can end up winning 6, 7 beats in a row, and it'll look like your opponent had absolutely no chance because they were placed in an untenable situation where they were forced to make a hard read, or, of course, continuously lose beats. So I think it'd be very useful to look at the specific matchup I played as Kadath and show you guys what I mean about this 2-for-1 concept. So let me move on to the replay here, and we will start it now. So it's me, Gaddath, the Mechanic Critic, versus Shadow Mancer's Rookyuk. He's a really good Rookyuk player from what I've played him against. You know, I've played a few games against him. So, this is the game. We have to remember that Rookyuk's a ranged character. He loves being at range. He loves staying away from me. And so what do I do at the start of the game as Gaddath? I try to control his positioning. Rookyuk plays really well when he's far away from me. Without any distance, most of Rookyuk's attacks are actually not that good, considering that he either has to spend resources, such as his long shot ammo, in order to hit in melee, or have to play styles that are naturally weak to burst plays, such as point blank, and, of course, the switch style. However, his switch style is in discards, so I don't have to worry about that. Therefore, I play the Blight Strike early on. This is the beginning of what I'd like to call a game where I try to set up and fail. This is what controller characters will seem like if you're not playing them well enough. I'll just let you watch the next 2 beats without interrupting so much and to see what I mean, because you will absolutely see what I mean.
I can't miss. Swiftly now.
So I anti the priority to force him to anti the priority. I think I was playing this because I was fearing something along the lines of a drive, a point blank drive or something along those lines. However, I do fine. So this is a trade not in my favor. Ooh, that looks like it hurts. And so at this point, Rook gets the positioning he wants, right? This is a net loss for me. Even if we traded 5 to 4, Rook is now at range 4 from me. And I don't have access to my teleport because I made the grave mistake of putting my marker behind the Rookyuk instead of in front of him. Now I'm stuck at this range with a really, really bad shot. So I play this attack. It doesn't turn out well. Okay. Okay. I'm back here. Now, I don't really have to explain what happened there, right? My opponent outplayed me those first 2 beats. He was able to trade, gather the distance, and then I misplayed by putting my trap behind him instead of in front of him. This is really, really scary as Gaddath. I'm not getting to use any of my trap skills, and it'll seem like I basically could do nothing in these situations. And that's really the case when it comes to controller characters. You know, if you mess up your positioning once, it kind of goes down the drain. However, this matchup becomes very interesting because as you can see here right now, my life total is at 12. I will retain this life total for the rest of this game until the very end. So it might boggle your mind, but I actually win every single beat after this one. And I will explain to you why that's the case. And it usually starts with what happens next. My opponent decides to retreat onto my gate trap rather than go forward. This isn't a bad play. Sniper forces you to move, and he doesn't want to get closer to me because he does not have point blank in his hand, and he doesn't want to waste his long shot. So, what do I do in this situation? Notice that I play the evacuation snare. And this is the first step to how controller characters win their games. You can't be scared to take risks. Controller characters might seem like consistent characters who play a lot of safe attacks because, hello, you're a controller character. Aha, I have a safe attack that will work like 80% of the time. But that's the deal. Safe doesn't get you anywhere in BattleCon Online, and in fact, BattleCon Paper Edition, because your opponents expect safe. So if you play safe all the time, you're not gonna get anywhere. Your opponents will see this coming. In this situation, what would a regular Kadath usually do? I don't know. Maybe perhaps do a Hunter's Shot, which is relatively safe at this point in time. Granted, my opponent can indeed burst. I can do a Hunter Snare, which again is a very safe attack, right? It's relatively fast at 5 priority. Rukyuk, 5 priority because the trap gives Rukyuk -3 and Hunters gives me +2 priority, so that's effectively 5 priority. And Rukyuk doesn't really have a lot to deal with it. You know, he can try to drive, but he might be slower, so on and so forth. And there's a lot of things that I could have done here, but what I did was take a huge risk. Because if my opponent just decided to drive or burst, Evacuation Snare would not work. But it did. Because my opponent was expecting me to do something else entirely. And so he plays this attack. Well, you're gonna see the attack later on. He will anti his long shot token, and this indicates what the attack is. It's something with a lot of minimum range. It's most likely a crossfire. So I anti-power, because I know he's probably doing crossfire at this point. He will then respond by antiing more power, because he's like, I have crossfire anyway, he can't stun me. And then, bam. Crossfire strike. This is a hard read. I expected him to do crossfire something. Crossfire strike, to be precise. Because I knew that this was one of his biggest payouts. This will deal 8 damage if it connected with me. And a lot of the things that I do wouldn't actually do anything to Crossfire Strike. It would like trade 8 to 3 or 2 on average, right? And this was a good trade for him no matter what, because I would be brought down to 4 life. However, I read this, and I played the exact attack pair that would counter this. Evacuation Snare not only makes him miss because Crossfire Strike doesn't move, Snares on hit to gain power and ignore soak means that I will trade positively, not even trade positively, I will just deal 5 damage to this Rukyuk despite him playing Crossfire. And this, my friends, is the beginning of what I'd like to call the end. So the beat will play out. I will go faster than him, I will deal 5 damage ignoring his soak, and he will miss because of Evacuation's passive effect that causes opponents on my gate trap to miss. This is where it kind of goes crazy. Because the moment that I've got him on my trap, and now he's kind of quote-unquote stuck there, I'm left with a lot of options. My opponent is not. He's not really fast when he's on the trap, and he doesn't have Sniper in his hand. All of his attacks are therefore now slow. And as Kadath, I can abuse that. My opponent now has a lot of options to consider, but it's really hard for him to reach 7 priority when he doesn't have Grasp or Sniper in hand. So Blight Drive is actually a really safe attack. The only thing my opponent can do here is actually burst away. See, he even tries to go faster here by doing a Gunner's Drive. But that's not gonna be enough. I'm gonna be faster because my effective priority is 7. And this is what I'm talking about. In the previous beat, it seemed like he couldn't do anything. Now it seems like he couldn't do anything. Of course, he can do something. But my opponent essentially has to pick between a bunch of 50-50s. Is Kadath gonna do this? Is Kadath gonna do that? In this situation, I could have easily just shot him and punished him for doing a burst. So now, my Blight Drive is here. Boom, I hit him for 3, and suddenly I'm now in the lead. That's crazy, right? But now, the trap is between us. And here we go. My opponent can try to dodge me, but he can't because of the gate trap. He can try to do a bunch of other attacks using point-blank shots and stuff like that, but I play Kadath's biggest power pair in this matchup, the Teleport Shot. The Teleport Shot is dangerous because not only does it allow me to evade attacks from Rukyuk from miles away, especially now that his drive is down, goodness, it allows me to reposition myself entirely no matter what. So even if I mess up this beat, next beat, I will have an advantage by default. So what happens next? My opponent, actually being a good Rukyuk player, does something interesting.
No problem.
So he will now anti the Ignore Soak, which doesn't matter against Kadath, who doesn't have Soak, but he needs it to hit. He needs the anti-ammo to hit. So I'm like, haha, I'll just deal more damage to you. But then he reveals this attack. What I originally thought of was as a win because, haha, you just played burst into my shot, immediately became really, really frustrating because of this. Clash! We had the same priority. I wasn't expecting the parry, but he parried me. So, in that situation, it was untenable. I had no ranged attacks. Snare, drive, and shot were all disabled. Teleport has no range. So, I was left with either striking or grasping the air, or I could dodge in order to reposition myself and hopefully avoid an attack, because Rokyuk can literally hit me with a variety of moves at this point. However, I should have read the fact that he was going to reload since he had no more ammo. So, what happens here in this game is the fact that I will now make a huge mistake as Kadath. I will advance into one space so that I can take the center of the board. As a control character, you want to play where your opponent's uncomfortable in. And by staying in the center, Sniper will never be able to hit unless he antis long shot. And that's more than good enough for me. My opponent will of course go to the corner. As Ryukyu, you want to get to the corner as much as possible. And here's where I make my mistake. I try to move my gate trap. And I misclick. And I place it in a dumb spot. Literally behind myself. So, to try to recover, I go adjacent to my opponent and play the only attack pair that would work at this range. Well, a lot of attack pairs would actually work at this range, but this one works the quote-unquote best. My opponent now is in what we call the corner situation, or the corner trap, which is really interesting because cornering yourself is actually a good thing in BattleCon if you don't want your opponent doing dodges and tricky stuff on you. So, now that he's in the corner, he can safely play a variety of moves, specifically trick, anything, long shot, in order to guarantee damage on me. And this might be very important for Rook, who can easily deal like 6 or 7 damage given the right setup and given the right tokens. So, I play an Evacuation Grasp. A lot of things beat this out. Specifically, my opponent's ability to just play like Gunner Grasp and then anti a token in order to make me miss. But notice how in this situation, even if I made a complete mistake, my opponent's discards actually really make it hard for him to not win against Evacuation Grasp. In fact, the only way he wins against it is by playing a certain attack pair and then antiing these. See, notice how my opponent only has Trick, Special Action or Switch, Crossfire, Sniper, and wait, what's the other style? Shucks, why am I forgetting Rook styles? So Point Blank, Point Blank, Gunners, Snipers, Crossfire, Trick. Oh, I listed all of them. My mistake. So he has access to those 3 styles and the Switch. And that means that none of his attacks actually hit at this range unless he does Long Shot. And that means that I have a big amount of pressure on my opponent right now. He basically, on his side, thinks, I'm not going to hit with anything at this point. So he has to do something to make it hit. And the most obvious answer there is doing Long Shot, because Long Shot allows him to easily convert anything into a stun immune shot, which is exactly what he does by doing Trick, Strike, Anti-Long Shot token. Long Shot token and gets antied. There's the Trick Strike. And I completely win this beat once again. I will retreat one space, grasp my opponent onto the gate trap, and once again, using Evacuation's passive effect, make him miss. So I will deal 2 damage, and then I'll put them onto the trap. So notice that I've been winning a lot of these beats, and I'm not really dealing that much. It takes me around 3 or 4 beats to even get him to this point. But that's the deal. My opponent is continuously being pressured to do something about my ability to trap him, and my ability to do these crazy tricks. So now my opponent's on the gate trap. He doesn't have any melee options outside of doing the switch. Long Shot token is now gone. Gunners will always miss at this range unless he does Gunner Drive. However, Gunner Drive now has priority -3 because he's on the trap. What can my opponent do in this situation? And any good BattleCon player will tell you that the thing you do in this situation is, to quote Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z, dodge! Dodge, Gohan! Dodge! And that's exactly what my opponent does. And I read it. because I know that it's the only thing that he can do right now without risking taking huge damage from Kadath's Hunter's style. See, throughout this entire game, I never play the Hunter's style. However, the mere existence of it pressures my opponent to do things. See, my opponent can just, pretend that it's all hunky-dory and eat the attack, and not play dodge at this point. However, not only is that potentially allowing yourself to get killed because Kadath can easily just Hunter's Drive anti-power to deal 6 damage, my opponent basically goes, that's a loss, right? So, I'm pressuring him right now. Even if you never see the card, Hunter's is actually doing a lot of work here because it's pressuring my opponent with lethal. So now that I know that's happening, my opponent will think, oh, I have to avoid lethal because, again, lethal is the worst case. You don't want to do a move that will result in you completely dying. And in the most mindset of players, dodging is the most, safe thing to do. Blight Burst is a direct counter to dodge because, well, I guess I'll just let you guys see for yourselves. My opponent will anti a useless token. He's dodging, but he wants to bluff. And then bam, the Gunner dodge. And I see it perfectly, right? Gunner dodge happens. I'm able to... Did you see what happened there? Gunner dodge is usually faster, which should make this a win for him, since he can just start a beat over me and then dodge my attack. However, Blight Burst is priority 1 and the trap gives him priority -3, which means that Blight Burst actually becomes faster. And the order of start of beats now actually matters, because now I do my start of beats first. I retreat 2, and I'm able to put my gate trap directly in front of him. This forces my opponent to make a hard choice. Does he dodge backwards, or does he dodge onto the trap? And now you might be thinking to yourself, well, duh, you dodge backwards. You're Rukyuk, you want to stay far away, and who wants to get priority -3? That might seem like the obvious choice, but you might have to notice what the upcoming card in my discard pile is. Teleport. My opponent is left once again in a horrible catch-22. He can choose to dodge backwards, eat my 3 damage, and then basically always lose to my teleport shot at this point. Teleport shot is a priority 1 attack. Sure, he can technically dodge it by clashing me, but that's nearly untenable, right? He has to make a good read because I still have access to Hunter's shot. And if he tries to clash my teleport shot, which is priority 1, he'll have only priority 1, and my Hunter's shot would have priority 2, and it would kill him. So he's left in that situation. If he chooses to retreat, he can choose to advance though, and advancing brings teleport offline, which means that it won't be useful to me, but he'll have priority -3 next beat, and you'll see that plays a huge role in pressuring my opponent later on. So this is what my opponent does. He chooses to advance 1 space, and I promptly deal 3 damage to him and stun him. This is very important. This stun is also very important because it negates the after activating effect on Gunner, which allows me to keep him on the trap. And that's the end. My opponent basically can't do anything at this point if you think about it. He's still worried about the Gunners. He's still worried about the Gunners. He's still worried about the Hunters. See, I can Hunter shot at this point, and it would basically deal with almost anything he can play. And in fact, it probably does. Hunter's shot would be around priority 7. So the only way he could get out of it is by doing a grasp and then missing. So there's that. There's also the fact that I can just, do a lure strike and still deal enough damage to kill him. See, now you're starting to see the big problem here. My opponent is running out a lot of options, and he can choose to do a variety of attacks at this point, and he can absolutely do Crossfire Burst. But, well, that's not what happens. Hindsight is 2020 when it comes to fighting against controller characters. I play Lure Strike here, you see my opponent play an attack that doesn't beat Lure Strike, and then you're like, well, you should have done the thing to beat the Lure Strike. It's not always going to be that way. My opponent is under time pressure, my opponent cannot think through all of the possible options, And I'm basically guaranteed a win here so long as he doesn't play Crossfire. And even if he does play Crossfire, he will miss. So there's a lot of stuff happening right now. My opponent's trying to go real fast and he does a point blank drive, trying to stun me out. Thinking that, hey, maybe I'll try to stun him out. It's not gonna be the case. And I completely decimate him with my Lure Strike because he will push me away, but Lure Strike has full board range. Boom. Sure, you push me onto my gate trap, but then I will strike back and hit you for 4 damage. And even pull you back directly onto me.
I can still.
No, you can't. And that results in my victory. So, that's not necessarily an indicative game of what all control games are like. Control characters are very varied. Control characters have a lot of different ways that they can choose to control the board or control the opponent. But that's just going to show you guys how important it is to understand that control characters might seem weak, but that's the point. You see, if a control character could easily deal a lot of damage to you while controlling you continuously, then they'd just be directly better than every other character. So, when you're playing BattleCON online and you're using one of these control characters, be it Karen and Jaeger, be it Kadath, be it maybe even one of the specialists who you're not used to yet, just remember that it's all about those situations. Placing your opponents in those hard to read situations where they're forced to make big decisions or forced to make really, really, really tough decisions that can basically allow you to loop them. See, control characters in BattleCON play a lot like reset loop characters in fighting games. I do a thing that forces you to pick between one of 2 options. And then you get punished for choosing the wrong one, and then you're placed in the exact same situation again. Control characters do that with their positioning, with their tricky styles, with their everything. So if you're ever wondering why the heck does Kadath have such poor stats compared to somebody like Schecter, you may want to reconsider how effective you are at doing those things and how effective Kadath is at winning a series of beats where your opponent may or may not be able to do anything. So, I do hope that you guys enjoyed this episode of Making Connections. This is new and this is experimental, and I want you guys to tell me in the comment section down below if you think it's cool, if you think this is the kind of content that you want. Of course, don't forget, absolutely do not forget to give us a like, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. If you're watching this, if you watch this for the analysis, thank you very much. Please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel so that you can stay updated on everything and you stay updated when the next episode of Making Connections comes out. And please tell me in the comment section down below if this is the kind of content you want, or do you want me to just go back to playing games while I react to them. So without much else to say, thank you so much for watching World of Indians. Thank you and good night. Oh, by the way, don't forget your Force Special Action.